a hornet's nest. Some people love him. Some people are calling for his impeachment, saying he's betrayed America because he doesn't love Ukraine more than America. To help me go through all that, I have Roger Stone. Roger, thank you for joining me again.
It's great to be with you, Stephen. The more we learn about the confrontation in the Oval Office, the more suspicious it gets. We now know that this was a setup that backfired badly. So we've learned that Anthony Blinken, Victoria Nuland, Susan Rice, Alexander Vindman, Senator Chris Murphy, all the Obama gang, were advising Volodymyr Zelensky to set up this confrontation with Donald Trump. Now, the problem with that, of course, is for anyone who followed the Russian collusion hoax is it's a violation of the Logan Act. You're not allowed to have your own foreign policy. It was claimed by the left, for example, that during the Vietnam War, that Richard Nixon had reached out through an intermediary indirectly to the South Vietnamese to urge them not to come to the peace table at the last minute when there was a bombing halt before the 1968 election. And the left went crazy. Very recently, historian Luke Nichter has proven that that was a false narrative, that Nixon did no such thing. But that was an indirect contact. In this case, you have stalwarts like Nuland, Blinken, Rice, Vindman. This is a serious issue. I honestly think that Attorney General Pam Bondi should appoint a special counsel. That special counsel should be confirmed by the U.S. Senate, so there's no question about their authority, and she should launch an investigation here and prosecute if these allegations are accurate. By the way, Chris Murphy, the senator from Connecticut, he's another one who urged Zelensky not to take the peace deal that Donald Trump has put forward. There's no congressional immunity for violations of the Logan Act.
Wow. Can you help my audience understand, just in a nutshell, what is the Logan Act and how did they violate it?
Well, see, basically, once Donald Trump becomes president, he has the authority to conduct foreign policy. Private citizens cannot conduct their own foreign policy against the president's stated wishes and his plans. So, for example, Joe Biden suggested that General Flynn might be prosecuted under the Logan Act, even though in the end, the communications that he had when he was appointed national security advisor with the Russian ambassador didn't violate the Logan Act because he wasn't urging any specific course of action. John Kerry, who continued after the Iranian arms deal had been canceled by President Trump to conduct his own negotiations with the Iranians, he also, in my opinion, violated the Logan Act. Basically, private citizens, even the minority party, when they lose a presidential election, cannot interfere with the conduct of foreign policy. It's very specifically illegal. When Nixon was accused of it falsely, his critics said that it was treasonous, that he was preventing the war in Vietnam from ending. That turned out to be false. But it just shows you how the left has two different standards. This is a very serious crime. And if these reports are accurate, I think it warrants prosecution.
Okay. I'm just looking here on your X account. Alexander Vindman, that name is so familiar to me. Isn't he the guy that was pushing for Trump to be Ukraine because of Zelensky in his first term?
Yeah, basically you have two criminal brothers here. Both of them were on the national security staff. They still had their jobs under President Donald Trump. They're the ones who made up the Ukrainian hoax, the Ukrainian impeachment hoax, which we now know had two purposes. One was to cover up the crimes of Joe Biden and his son. Yes, it's true. Donald Trump, who as president absolutely had the authority to ask the president of Ukraine whether there was an ongoing investigation into Joe and his son and Burisma. So the Vindmans basically unleashed the Ukrainian collusion hoax to cover that up, but also to try to one more time remove Donald Trump, a duly elected president, from office on the basis of a falsehood. Trump had the authority to ask those questions. That's part of his job as president.
Okay. I want to come back to the Ukraine stuff because President Trump is absolutely furious this morning. The big headlines are Zelensky just said the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I want to get to that. But first, Adam Schiff. This is a guy that I personally believe should be investigated. I've put it out on my YouTube. Do you think this guy committed crimes, that he misled the American people? Hundreds of thousands of Americans have responded on my channel. They want to see this guy. Listen to what he has to say about Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, and then I want to get your thoughts on it.
We saw that last week the Senate tragically confirmed Kash Patel to be FBI director. But in case you missed it, the president just appointed this guy to be his number 2.
You ever hear that House on Fire song? It's one of his old songs. This guy's on fire, just like the Bailey song. That house on fire. He is on fire, Schiff. 100% success rate of failing.
That's Dan Bongino, right-wing conspiracy theorist, podcaster. He's going to be the number 2 at the FBI working with Kash Patel. This is a guy who has zero experience at the FBI. He has not worked a day in his life for the FBI. Bear in mind, we have not had a deputy director of the FBI who was not a long-term veteran of the Bureau in over 100 years. And there's a reason for that. This number 2 position has access and buy-in on some of the most sensitive operations the FBI does. That is when they engage in surveillance, like electronic surveillance of organized crime or of foreign spies operating in the United States. This is the guy who may be point. He is also a person who's going to have a key responsibility in working with our allies and their intelligence and law enforcement agencies. This is someone you need who has experience and character and trust, who has a reputation for being a straight shooter. The last thing we want is a conspiracy theorist. What is this guy known for? How did he come to the attention of Donald Trump? He's known for his conspiracy theories. He's known for pushing out the big lie that Donald Trump won the 2020 election when he lost. He's known for being a COVID disinformation super spreader, notwithstanding he got the vaccine himself. This is a guy who is also a Russia denier. This is the qualifications now necessary to reach high office. He's going to be working with Kash Patel. He's going to be focused on political payback. And while he's doing the political payback, guess what he's not going to be focused on? He's not going to be focused on going after fentanyl traffickers. He's not going to be focused on going after murderers and violent criminals and gangs. He's not going to be focused on what matters to you. He's going to be focused on the political vendettas of Donald Trump.
Gosh, from his lips to God's ears. I would love some people that have made Donald Trump's life a living hell to see some vendetta and some justice. What are your thoughts on him saying Dan Bongino's not qualified, the FBI can only hire within the FBI, and that this guy has no experience with keeping the country safe?
Well, first of all, let's be very clear. It was Adam Schiff who said repeatedly that he had seen more than circumstantial evidence of Russian collusion with the Trump campaign. He produced no such thing. He repeated it over and over and over again. Then when he was cornered, he said, well, we know that a high-level Trump campaign official gave polling information from the campaign to a Russian intelligence asset. The problem with that is it's a lie. The person he's referring to is Paul Manafort, the former campaign manager for Donald Trump. But at the time that Schiff made this allegation, the Trump campaign had no proprietary polling information. So anything Manafort would have shared with anyone would have had to be public information, something you could find on the internet. And the man that he shared it with, Konstantin Kilimnik, is not only not a Russian intelligence asset, he's actually a U.S. intelligence asset. The independent journalist Matt Taibbi has proven that. So when he's pressed, he falls back on that to try to defend himself on the Russian hoax that he put the country through for 2 years. But in terms of his own crimes, the inspector general at the Justice Department under Joe Biden had a report only weeks ago saying that Adam Schiff and his sidekick, Eric Swalwell, had shared classified information with several media outlets, and that the FBI had proof of this. Now, that is a serious crime, one that he should be charged with. His real problem here is that you won't have a politicized FBI with Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. This is a deeply corrupted agency. I could tell you firsthand because I remember well the morning that 29 heavily armed FBI agents in full SWAT gear in brandishing fully automatic assault weapons surrounded my home and stormed it at 6 o'clock in the morning for the non-existent crime of lying to Congress under oath. Only after I was pardoned did we learn that the judge withheld exculpatory evidence from my defense attorneys, and that Robert Mueller's final report, which was hidden from us, actually concluded that they'd found no evidence of Russian collusion or WikiLeaks collaboration, or for that matter, any other crime. Perfect example of the abuse of power by the FBI. By the way, normally, if you have no previous criminal record, and you're being charged with a process crime, a white-collar process crime, they would just call your lawyer and tell you to turn yourself in. Of course, they didn't do that because they wouldn't have been able to leak my arrest to the CNN camera crew and to make a circus out of it. A circus that, by the way, cost the taxpayers $1.1 million. Also allowed me to raise millions of dollars for my legal defense. So Adam Schiff is scared. You can see it. It's palpable. He's throwing everything out there because he knows you're going to have two straight shooters at the FBI, and the fix is no longer in that agency.
Do you think he's at all worried that he's going to come up on their radar and they're going to come after him? To me, this feels like he's trying to put up a wall, right? Like,
yes,
they're going to get revenge. They're going to go after enemies. They're going to make stuff up. But really, he's like building this wall to protect himself from Bongino and also from Kash Patel.
I think that is precisely what's going on here. Now, I would say that I think there are others ahead of him in line. James Comey, we learned just days ago, yet again, sent two very attractive female undercover agents to infiltrate Donald Trump's campaign in 2016. This is prior to the inception of Crossfire Hurricane, which was had no probable cause. There was no evidence that justified the Mueller investigation. There was no evidence that justified the efforts to try to frame Donald Trump for Russian collusion. But he sent two very attractive female undercover agents into the president's campaign to infiltrate it and to ply their, shall we say, their sexual abilities, their sexual attractiveness to try to get dirt on members of Trump's staff or even Trump himself. So that's a very serious crime. Kash Patel has already announced that he's investigating it. Then there's John Brennan. John Brennan is, of course, the former CIA director. He's an admitted communist, said he voted for the Communist Party candidate for president. He is the man who converted to radical Islam when he was the CIA station chief in Riyadh. He became a Wahhabist, which is the most radical type of Islam. He also signed the visas for 4 of the 8 hijackers who attacked America on 9/11. He lied under oath to the Senate about spying on a Senate committee and on senators who were investigating his illegal use of torture. But more important than all of that, John Brennan is the man who contacted the Five Eyes, the English-speaking nations' intelligence agencies, and gave them a list of 26 people who were supporters or friends of Donald Trump. I was on that list. So was George Papadopoulos. So was Carter Page. So Brennan asked the other nations to spy on us, to surveil us, again, without any probable cause, without any justification, to give himself deniability so he could say that he hadn't done it. Again, a violation of the law. He is really the father of the Russian collusion hoax, and you can see him sweating on television. He's flipping out because I'm on Kash Patel's hit list. Well, dude, you're on Kash Patel's hit list because you engaged in treason. The Russian collusion hoax is the greatest single dirty trick in American political history. It's nothing less than the full use of the authority of the United States government, plus the extraordinary capability of our intelligence agencies using 2 pieces of what they knew, Comey, Brennan, Schiff, was fraudulent evidence. The so-called Steele dossier, which the deputy director of Mueller's investigation Andrew Weissman knew all the way back to his time as general counsel to the FBI was a fraud that had been created and paid for by Hillary Clinton, and the false claim that the Democrat National Committee had been the target of a Russian intelligence online hack. There is no evidence to support that, although it's interesting that in my trial, the FBI admitted that they had never inspected the computer servers at the DNC. They were relying entirely on a company called CrowdStrike. The problem with that was that the head of CrowdStrike, Sean Henry, who just happens to have been the deputy to Robert Mueller when he was at the FBI, testified under oath before the House Intelligence Committee that his investigation and so-called memo contained no evidence of a Russian hack on the DNC. So they knew that these two bases for their investigation and for their attempt to remove Trump were a fraud. So yes, I think they all have serious problems. These are serious crimes.
Okay. I hate to keep showing Adam Schiff because I find his voice to be annoying, and I believe he is a liar. But I agree with you, Roger, that he is panicking. I also believe he just continues to drop misinformation on President Trump. I want to watch one more video clip, and then I promise I'll be done with this clown. But he basically says that Donald Trump owes more allegiance and love to the Ukrainian people than the American people. Let's go ahead and watch this together.
Well, to the people of America, I want to just say this is not who we are. This is not who we are. We don't bully an ally. We don't take the side of a dictator. We don't ignore the long and important role that we have played in defending democracy. That is not who we are. We're just not what we saw displayed by the President of the United States today. And I think we all have a role to play right now in the defense, not just of Ukraine, but of what the country stands for, of our values. I would say to our allies around the world, what they witnessed to might be Donald Trump, but it is not America. And we'll have to get through this period. We'll have to struggle through this period. We'll have to be more reliant. When I say we, the freedom-loving people of the world, are going to have to be more reliant on other leaders in the world because we cannot rely on this president. And it's a terrible way to feel about a president of the United States, but the shameful display we had today is so antithetical to everything that our country has stood for, and I hope it is never repeated.
Okay, so he says this is not America, yet a vast majority of Americans want to be done with the war. They don't want another penny sent to Ukraine. Your thoughts on Adam Schiff's comments?
This is laughable. Democracy, really. Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, has repeatedly canceled elections. He's outlawed every political party except for his. He's arrested most of his political opponents. He also arrests journalists, closes down TV stations, radio stations, and newspapers that criticize him, and he closed down the largest church in the country. So how is he different than Putin? I have no great love for Putin or the Russians. I mean, my family members were mowed down by Russian tanks in Budapest in 1956. But to say that Zelensky and this fight is about democracy is false. We have given Mr. Zelensky and his country $350 billion. First of all, he can't account for half of it. He doesn't know where the money went. I think we know where it went. It went into the pockets of U.S. politicians. Secondarily, we gave this guy $350 billion. He's coming to visit the president of the United States. He can't wear a suit and tie. When he spoke to the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab, he wore a suit and tie, but he addresses a joint session of Congress in a dirty sweatshirt. He comes to meet the president of the United States in a dirty sweatshirt. It's disrespectful not only to the president, but disrespectful to the American people. People understand what this war is really about. Schiff and his allies want to put NATO missiles in Ukraine pointed at Russia. That is a violation of the Budapest Memorandum that we signed back when the Russians agreed to reunify East and West Germany. It's a violation of the Minsk Accords, which our nation also signed, which we guaranteed that we would not do this. It's not different at all than the Russians putting missiles in Cuba in 1962, 90 miles from our shore. So we're in violation here. People like Schiff will tell you this is about Putin wanting to swallow up all of Ukraine, all of Poland, all of Germany, all of France. It's nonsensical. Adam Schiff is a congenital liar. He lies about everything, and I think he's been busted. So now they just recycle the same garbage. This fight is not about democracy. It's about covering up the crimes of the elitist globalists like Mr. Schiff himself. Ukraine has been a center for child sex trafficking, money laundering, and epic corruption. It's interesting because Lindsey Graham, who is normally a huge supporter of Ukraine, immediately after this sided with President Trump and said Zelensky was out of line. That's because Lindsey Graham knows that the Ukrainians have been involved in assassinations, epic corruption. There's been huge theft of money, at least assassination of at least one U.S. journalist. And he knows that the American people are going to learn all of that. So he's out trying to get out ahead of it. But you're right. The American people are fed up with this war. We have homeless veterans in this country, yet we're shipping billions to Ukraine. This makes no sense to Americans. And the president's on the right path here. Zelensky cannot win this war. He has already burned through billions of dollars, our weapons. He's conscripting 16 and 17-year-old boys to join his army to be cannon fodder for the Russians. The Russians have them, I think, outmatched, and we need peace. We need negotiations. But what's strange here, Stephen, is under Biden, there were not even any talks going on. In other words, we had no contact with the Russians or the Ukrainians, and we couldn't encourage the Ukrainians to talk to the Russians because our State Department would not allow it. So they have no interest in peace. All they're interested in doing is prolonging this war because it's making people like Adam Schiff and Lindsey Graham and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer money. I would point out to you that Elon Musk, who's running the Doge operation, has access to enormous information, as well as Congressman Tim Burchett from Tennessee, have both said, we're going to learn that there are offshore bank accounts containing millions and millions of dollars that were skimmed off the top of our Ukrainian war funding.
Yeah, I believe that. I look forward to reporting on that. Okay, all weekend, the mainstream media crapped all over President Trump, this Oval Office meeting. I went back and watched it. It was obvious that Zelensky, it seemed like he was trying to provoke Trump, trying to provoke J.D. Vance. Just before that, as we talked about earlier in the show, many members of Congress were urging him privately, do not sign this deal, do not give in to Donald Trump. Now he says he's ready to do it. But all of a sudden, all of the coverage over the weekend is how good the European Union is, how they will continue to take care of them, how America has abandoned them. The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom had something to say. I want to roll that because it has me very nervous. Let's go ahead and watch that together.
The UK is prepared to back this with boots on the ground and planes in the air, together with others. Europe must do the heavy lifting. But to support peace in our continent and to succeed, this effort must have strong US backing.
So this is Starmer. He's calling for boots on the ground and planes in the air in order to continue to stick it to Putin, to show total loyalty to Zelensky. And now he's saying, but we can't do this unless America is on board. I also heard Zelensky say that Trump said Zelensky isn't serious about peace. Tulsi Gabbard, director of national intelligence, over the weekend said Zelensky isn't really looking for peace, but America is. Today, Zelensky told European press the end of the war with Putin is far, far away. And on Sunday, Zelensky said, American sons and daughters will fight this war and shed blood for Ukraine. Is this what President Trump is trying to avoid?
Yeah, Sturmer wants World War III. First of all, he's right about one thing. If the Europeans are so hot for this war, why aren't they paying for their share of it? We paid $200 million more for the defense of Ukraine than they have paid. So, yeah, if you feel that strongly about it, you ought to step up. I watched the Oval Office meeting several times. I got to be honest with you, Stephen. I think that Zelensky looks coked up to me. So he is put up to his antics. He's trying to provoke Trump. This backfires badly on him when Trump manhandles him and puts him in his place and tells him that there's no gratitude, number one. Number two, we should get some of this money back. We should get it back either in mineral rights or we should get it back in cash. But Donald Trump wants the money back. It's kind of like the Lend-Lease program under Franklin Roosevelt in World War II. Zelensky has no intention of paying us back. He says that President Biden said it was a gift or a grant. Well, I think the American people are fed up with this. You can see the mainstream media trying to recycle their narrative that this is somehow about democracy or about a threat to Europe. But as I said earlier, I don't think that's true. And I think Trump was elected on a pledge to end this war. This is a very important point, which is the war and how it would be prosecuted and handled was up front and center in the presidential campaign. People knew when they voted for Kamala Harris, they would have been voting for a continuation of continuing to shovel billions to Ukraine with no end in sight. And they knew that Donald Trump had every intention of negotiating a settlement to this war. But it takes two to tango. And clearly Zelensky is interested in continuing to make money off the war. Now, strangely enough, he offered to resign as president of the country if he would simply let Ukraine join NATO, which again would be a violation of two different treaties that we have signed. I thought that was very odd as well.
When he says the war is far, far from over and that American sons and daughters will shed blood in Ukraine like his people have, isn't he trying to provoke NATO into war so that America has to defend Ukraine?
Yes, but I think Trump has outsmarted him. If this mineral deal can be arranged, and therefore there are American assets on the ground in Ukraine, then this would really, I think, cause a problem for the Russians if they're attacking American assets. What we don't want to do here is to trigger World War III, but that's exactly what Zelensky is trying to do. Again, Ukraine is not a NATO nation, and therefore the aggression, what he calls the aggression by the Russians, does not trigger all those other countries who have not stepped up financially. Only we have. This is a money-making deal for the globalists, also a way to cover up their epic crimes. The Vindmans, who we spoke about earlier, perfect example of people who have lied about this conflict and lied about the role of Joe Biden in it, the role of President Trump. They all see it crashing down around their ears. That's why you've seen them so aggressive this past weekend in trying to recycle a narrative that no one believes anymore.
Okay. Have you ever had Colonel Tony Schaefer on your show?
I have not, but I'm very interested in having. It's very funny you said that. So this morning, I took a red eye from Nevada. I was out there to speak to the Clark County Republican Lincoln Douglas Reagan Day dinner. And I saw a great video with Tony Schaefer on the plane and made a mental note to ask you, Stephen, how to get in touch with him because I thought he was terrific.
Okay, I'll get you guys connected. The reason I bring him up, he comes on my show pretty regularly, but he put out that there's actually two narratives going on right now. Let me just read that really quick. He said, there is a battle of two narratives, one false, that Donald Trump set up Zelensky for the confrontation and we should be outraged. The other, true, that Zelensky, the UK, and the European Union were playing the United States because the British had already signed a deal that would provide Ukraine security guarantees and right of access to Ukraine's gas, oil, and rare earth minerals, oversight of Ukraine's port, and opportunity to invest in the rebuilding of Ukraine. They were looking to succor the United States, us, into providing security for their exploitation of Ukraine. So he's saying we're being lied to. Europe is trying to get all of the advantage of Ukraine and this war on the back of the American taxpayer. What are your thoughts on that?
I think he's exactly right. When Susan Rice said the meeting in the Oval Office was a setup, she was absolutely right, but not a setup by President Trump and J.D. Vance. It was a setup by Zelensky. He was trying to provoke the outrage you saw, but I think Trump put him in his place. By the way, a poll I saw online showed that 91% of those who responded to it agreed with the president's position rather than Zelensky's. But again, the idea that people like former Secretary of State Anthony Blinken or Susan Rice or Victoria Nuland, the architect of the illegal coup in which 2014 we brought down a duly elected president to set the stage for all of this, by the way, with the strong support of Senator John McCain, the fact that these officials, these Americans, were coaching Zelensky on his meeting with Trump is a violation of the law. It's a violation, as we said earlier, of the Logan Act, and they should be prosecuted.
Okay. I'm going to show you a Truth Social post from President Trump. This is why I love him. This is why I voted for him. He says, we should spend less time worrying about Putin and more time worrying about migrant gang rape, drug lords, murderers, and people from mental institutions entering our country so that we don't end up like Europe. I mean, he was voted in, he won the majority, he won the swing states, he won the Electoral College to end this war, make America great, close our border. Now he acts on that and the Democrats lose their mind. Do they have no other option to lose their mind? Otherwise, they look like they're agreeing with him.
Look, I don't know why anybody is surprised. Through this entire campaign we just went through, President Trump on issue after issue told you exactly what he was going to do. It was Kamala Harris who had no platform and no plan for America. How ironic that shortly after she gets nominated in a process that is completely undemocratic, a process in which no Democrat primary or caucus voter voted to select Kamala Harris. She was coronated by party bosses after they forced Joe Biden out. She comes out and says that if she's elected, she will close our border. Wow, that's strange because she and Joe Biden had 4 years to seal the border. In fact, she was put in charge of the border. Now, I'll admit to you that the title Border Czar was made up by the media, but you can see the interview on NBC in which Joe Biden says he was putting her in charge of border security. She never even visited the border. And then a few days later, she came up with another great idea. She said she was going to end the tax on tips for American workers. So all she tried to do was copy the most popular planks in Donald Trump's platform. And then in the end, her closing message is, well, Trump is Hitler, and if you vote for him, that means you're a Nazi. That is not a very uplifting message for a general election.
Yeah. Okay. I think Elon Musk and his team at Doge are uncovering incredible stuff. If the Democrats had won, we would never know about all of the fake NGOs, the money laundering schemes, the dark money funds, George Soros using our money to destroy our country, Democrats using our money to flood the country with illegal immigrants. Elon Musk posted a clip over on Twitter, on X. It has roughly 40 million views on it now, but he said, roughly 300 billion in government money flows to nonprofits every year with zero transparency of where the money actually goes. Elon Musk recently shared with Joe Rogan that NGOs are the biggest scam in our country. That's because taxpayer-funded NGOs act as a loophole to funnel billions of dollars into shadowy, unaccountable organizations doing things that would be illegal if it were the federal government, but because it's not, they get away with it. Your thoughts on Elon Musk, and can Trump get these NGOs shut down?
I love Elon Musk because he restored my free speech rights, and after I had been canceled in 2017 simply because I supported Donald Trump. Secondarily, who among us is in favor of waste, fraud, and corruption? Elon Musk and his team at Doge are uncovering not millions, not billions, but trillions of dollars of waste, fraud, and corruption. And it is largely politically motivated. The USAID is the slush fund that they have been using. Now, the USAID was never actually formed by the Congress. It was never voted on. It was formed by executive order by President John F. Kennedy, and had an original good purpose, which was to fight communism in this hemisphere, to fund some of the emerging nations in Central and South America. It's much easier to talk to people about resisting communism when they have a full stomach. But it morphed into a slush fund that they've used for various purposes. It's interesting that some of these federal judges who have ruled that Trump doesn't have the executive authority that he does have, for example, the executive authority to examine this spending, which he gives to Elon Musk and has the ability to do by law, these judges have themselves nonprofit organizations, NGOs, that have gotten, in some cases, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars from USAID. So the federal judges trying to stop this disclosure are themselves conflicted. Then you have to ask yourself, who among us wants to hide waste, fraud, and public corruption? The people screaming the most about Elon Musk's stunning revelations are the people who have something to hide. Which is why you see the left now trying desperately to figure out some way to drive a wedge between Trump and Musk. Time magazine out this week has a picture of Elon Musk sitting at the presidential desk. That's not going to work. If you saw the interview on Sean Hannity with Musk and President Trump, Musk was appropriately deferential to the president. Trump clearly does have, under the Constitution, the executive authority to empower Elon Musk to use his superior IT team's talents and capabilities to ferret out all of this outrageous waste. The American people overwhelmingly approve of this. That's the other fake narrative you have here that says, well, Trump's poll numbers are collapsing. No, actually, the Harvard-Harris poll, one of the most liberal polls, says that Trump is got a 52%, 53% overall job approval rating. And on every issue, whether it is the economy or sealing the border or trying to end the war in Ukraine, he is leading where Joe Biden was in the same period in his term by almost 10 points across the board. So Trump's actually quite popular compared to his predecessor. Poll numbers are not collapsing. In fact, they're holding up, and they may be getting more intense as he tries very hard to end the war in Ukraine.
Yeah, your question, who among us wants fraud, waste, and corruption? Most of the American people don't, even the Democrats. And once names start being attached, and organizations and judges and politicians, I think more and more of them are going to be like, okay, I don't know if I like Trump, but I like what he's doing. I don't know how I feel about Elon Musk, but I like what they're doing. I'm so excited. I mean, we're not even, 60 days in, and look how much has done. Okay, final question. How is Trump measuring up compared to how you thought he might do during the election cycle?
Ironically, I think that as this turns out, the 4 years in the wilderness, the 4 years fighting the tsunami of lawfare, have given us a battle-hardened, much tougher, much wiser Donald Trump. So I think he would have been a great president if he had rightfully been given the office in 2020. But now I think that he is going to be among the most transformational presidents in our lifetime. I really think if he continues to drive away at his America First agenda, that America is about to enter a golden age. Let's call it the age of Trump. It is an unprecedented age of peace, prosperity, security, and justice, as well as law and order. So I think those 4 years in the wilderness have given him a much keener understanding of the Democrats and their symbiotic relationship with the fake news media, a much better understanding of the corruption of our judicial system, our FBI, our intelligence agencies, and therefore he's been able to write an agenda to bring real reform to the country. In 2017, we were in a different situation where Trump came from outside the world of politics. He reasonably thought, well, the Republicans are for me, the Democrats are against me. He never really understood that half the Republicans resented his rise and control of the party. They resented the America First hijacking of the Republican Party from the Bushes and the neocons, and they were out to get him from the moment he came down the escalator. But even then, they didn't think he could be elected. So despite the fact that some of those that he appointed in his first term thought their job was to delay and dilute and derail his agenda, he still had an extraordinarily successful term, a boom economy, rebuilding our national defense, no new foreign wars. He brought tens of thousands of American troops back from the Middle East, but without the countries they were leaving collapsing into the hands of the enemy behind them. So I think that he is outpacing my expectations. Every day is like Christmas. This announcement by the Treasury Department that they're no longer going to harass small businesses where you have to fill out this extensive paperwork to tell people who owns your company. My wife and I have owned the same little company since 1987. So what? We pay taxes on everything we're supposed to pay taxes on. It is harassment that is really detrimental to small business. Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, who's an outside-the-box thinker, and President Trump, very, very seriously looking at doing away with the IRS and doing away with the income tax entirely. You know, they say we as conservatives, we want to turn back the clock, turn it back to the 1890s. Well, in the 1890s, William McKinley was president. We had no income tax. The country was funded entirely on revenues from tariffs, and we liberated Cuba. So it was not such a bad time.
Trump is so far outpacing my expectations. I'm in awe every day. I'm like, I have to buy another Make America Great hat. Like, he just keeps making America greater and greater and greater. It's just so awesome to be able to cover him every day. Roger, you're a national treasure. If people want to follow you, get your books, where can I point them towards?
They should go to stonezone.com, stonezone.com. You can get all my books there. Also, I'm now doing a daily radio show at 77 WABC Radio. So that's at, WABCradio.com, WCRadio.com every night at 8 p.m. Eastern. But go to the Stone Zone and you'll find everything Roger Stone.
Okay, great. I'll put a direct link to that so that people can find it easily. I'm just about to start digging into your Bush family crime book. I'm so looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to having you on again. Thank you for taking time out of your day. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Stephen. God bless you.